If you've ever studied Viking settlements, from the farmsteads of coastal Norway to the trading posts in Iceland and the fortifications across Scandinavia, one detail stands out immediately. These people lived in some of the harshest climates in Europe: wet, cold, windy, and unforgiving. Yet the remains of their timber structures still survive in the ground, bogs and archaeological layers more intact than many modern outdoor projects built just 20 years ago. And this wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. The Vikings had a strategy that turned ordinary wood into a long-lasting building material capable of standing against moisture, insects, and decay. The surprising part is how simple the method actually is, and how easy it is for a modern builder, homesteader, or survivalist to replicate. If you've ever dealt with rotting posts, softening beams, or decay creeping through a shed floor, the Viking method may be the missing skill you've been looking for. The Vikings preserved wood by stabilizing moisture and controlling rot before it could ever begin. The fundamental insight the Vikings understood was that wood doesn't rot simply because it gets wet. It rots because it repeatedly cycles between wet and dry. That cycle opens the fibers, feeds fungi, and allows microorganisms to slowly eat the lignin and cellulose. Viking builders broke this cycle by permanently stabilizing the wood's moisture content before it was ever used. The most common technique involved a controlled charring of the exterior surface of posts, beams and planks, a method now called shosugiban in Japan, but practiced independently in Northern Europe centuries earlier. The Vikings intentionally burned the outer layer of wood just enough to carbonize it without weakening the inner structure. This charred shell became naturally hydrophobic, insect-resistant, and far harder than raw wood. If you want to apply this today, the technique is straightforward. A torch or controlled open flame is used to heat the wood surface until it turns black and begins to blister. The key is stopping before the burn penetrates deeply. Once cooled, the charred layer can be lightly brushed to remove the loose soot, leaving a hardened carbon skin. Posts treated this way can resist moisture for decades longer than untreated ones. This works exceptionally well for garden posts, the legs of raised beds, the lower sections of sheds, or any structure exposed to rainfall and soil contact. They also relied heavily on soaking wood in seawater to load the fibres with salt and minerals. Viking settlements often sat near coastlines, fjords or rivers, giving them access to mineral-rich water. Archaeological evidence shows that ship timbers, longhouse posts, and even everyday tools spent extended periods in the water before use. Saltwater soaking acted as a natural preservative. The salt penetrated deep into the fibres, altering the cellular environment so fungi and insects struggled to survive. Once dried, the salt remained crystallized within the wood, offering long-term protection. This method is, entirely practical today, even if you're far from the coast. You can recreate seawater by mixing salt into a large barrel or trough until the concentration is similar to that of the ocean. Submerge posts or planks for several days to a few weeks, depending on their thickness. For example, the lower half of a fence post, kept under water for, say, 7 to 10 days, absorbs enough salt to significantly resist decay. After soaking, The wood really must be dried slowly in a shaded, ventilated space. Quick drying tends to cause cracking, while slow drying allows the salts to distribute more evenly throughout the wood. The Vikings, interestingly, used tar not simply as a coating, but as a deep penetrating preservative that bonded with the grain. One of the best-known Viking preservation tools was pine tar, produced by slowly burning resinous pine roots in oxygen-limited pits. This thick, smoky, antibacterial liquid was brushed onto hulls, roof beams, shields and tools to protect them from moisture and insects. Pine tar penetrates wood fibres far more effectively than modern paint because it remains slightly soft and moves with the grain as seasons change. It also contains natural resins and acids that fungi simply cannot digest. Pine tar is still available today and is widely used in Scandinavia for traditional wooden houses. To use it correctly, warm it before application. Warm tar flows deeper into the wood, filling pores and stabilizing the surface. A practical modern application is treating tool handles, axe hafts, outdoor wooden furniture, or timber for barns and animal structures. For survivalists or homesteaders, tar combined with the earlier charring method becomes extremely effective. Lightly char the wood, brush away the loose carbon, and then apply warm tar. The tar sinks into the porous char and bonds into a protective layer, unlike anything modern hardware stores offer. The Vikings strategically shaped and placed wood to reduce exposure and extend life before preservation was even applied. Their final advantage came from carpentry technique. Viking beams were often hewn rather than sawn. Hewn surfaces compress the grain and close off pores, making the wood more resistant to moisture exchange. Posts were placed with the heartwood facing outward because heartwood is naturally more rot-resistant. Structures were elevated on stones or drainage layers to avoid direct soil contact. Even small choices such as orienting roof beams so rain slid off cleanly or setting posts at angles that shed water contributed significantly to longevity. You can apply the same ideas today, even in small backyard projects. When installing wooden posts, keep as much heartwood as possible exposed on the outside. Place posts on gravel or stone pads rather than directly in soil. For raised beds, bevel the top edges of lumber so water drains rapidly instead of sitting on a flat surface. These structural habits, paired with Viking preservation methods, can extend lifespan dramatically. The reason Viking methods still outperform modern treatments is that they work with wood instead of against it. You see, modern coatings often trap moisture inside the wood. Once water gets beneath the surface of paint or stain, rot accelerates. Viking methods focused on permeability, stability, and chemistry. The wood was allowed to breathe, expand, and contract. It resisted fungi because its environment was rendered inhospitable through salt tar char and density, not toxins. This is why Viking ships buried in wet soil for 1,000 years still retain structural integrity, and why longhouse posts left in harsh northern climates outlast modern treated lumber. When you combine controlled, charring, mineral-soaking pine tar treatment and thoughtful carpentry, you create wood that can stand for generations. These techniques are not museum curiosities. They're practical skills that anyone can use today in gardens, homesteads, workshops or cabins. If you found value in this deep dive into ancient craftsmanship and want to continue exploring forgotten engineering methods that still outperform modern shortcuts, make sure to subscribe to Thermal Vault and share this video with those who appreciate history that still works.